My name is Zach Taylor. I'm director at Psychotherapy Networker, and we are just surprising you on your social feed. Here we are. Uh, if you're here, stop, listen for a little while. We're here with an incredible guest, Dr. Catherine Pittman, who is an expert in anxiety disorders and understanding how to talk about the brain in psychotherapy. She's also a featured presenter at this year's Psychotherapy Networker Symposium, happening in, there it is, there's the magically appeared, happening in Washington, D.C., where you can meet her or you can join virtually online. We're really here, kind of like you're walking down the road and you come across a street musician. You don't know they're going to be there, but they just pop up and you might stop and listen for a little while. And we hope you do that, because we're going to talk a little bit about the amygdala, something every therapist knows about, but I'm not sure we know exactly how to talk about it. So if you do have a question, go ahead and throw it in the chat. But my question to Dr. Pittman is it actually really helpful to talk to clients about their amygdala when they're anxious? Does that actually improve response and outcomes and treatment? Does it actually help our work?
I just want to say it can be transformative with our clients, because the clients don't understand anxiety. And you may feel, and if you don't feel this way, I'd be surprised, that getting into neuroscience and talking about the brain can be very much over your head. But one of the things that we really want to help our clients understand is, what can you do to actually change your anxiety responses? And so even though we can understand this, the key is not just the understanding, but it's giving them tools that actually change their anxiety. And the other thing is to give them tools. And also, the thing about the amygdala is it helps motivate them to feel like there is something that we're going to be talking about as teaching your amygdala. You can train your amygdala. You can change your amygdala. So it's very important that people have a sense, first of all, of empowerment, that they can make a change in things. And then also to recognize that some of the things we're going to talk to them about the amygdala are very simple things, but they don't believe that they matter until they know there's an amygdala. Because here's an example, okay? One of the quickest ways to reduce anxiety is to engage in some exercise. But many people say that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't change anything. Only if you know the amygdala do you understand that the amygdala reacts to exercise and shuts down what we call the defense reaction, or the fight or flight response. And you have to have introduced the amygdala in order for them to see why exercise might make a difference. So I try to say, for example, the ways that we can explain this are simpler than you might expect. I try to explain the amygdala is this small part of our brain that's designed to protect us, but its ways of protecting us are to help us run or fight or to freeze up. That's all it's got, you know? And so when we talk about that, and I say, so if you run, then your amygdala thinks you've done what you needed to do. And even though the thing that you might be stressed out about, maybe not being able to pay your mortgage, the truth is that if you run, the amygdala will react as though you're safe. And until you understand the amygdala, that wouldn't make sense to you. Another thing I want to tell you, I don't know if this has happened to you, but I've had a hard time getting people to believe that breathing makes a difference. If you just try to explain to people, there's a certain kind of breathing that can help you cope with anxiety. Very often people will say, right, that sounds stupid, But if I say, we can measure changes in the amygdala. There's certain machines that allow us to see the amygdala in action called fMRIs, and the amygdala will be all lit up, which means that it's producing anxiety. And if we just have people change their breathing in a certain way for just 5 minutes, we start to see the color of the amygdala in the brain change, the calmness starting in that amygdala. So because we have these brain because we have this ability to see the brain in action now, we have been able to learn techniques that will change it. And you know what my clients say when they hear that? They say, what's this breathing that you're supposed to do? Whereas
Mhm.
before they don't, they're like, but if they know that there is a part of themselves that they can teach, they can change
Mhm.
in real time, by exercising, by breathing differently,
Mhm.
then very often they're motivated.
Yeah. And Melissa mentioned in the chat here that it reduces stigma as well. Have you
Right.
seen people kind of feel more hopeful
Yeah.
when their symptoms are linked to a part of their brain that they can then exercise and change?
Right. And it distances them from their reactions in a
Mhm.
way that they feel like it's not me doing it, it's my amygdala. And they're motivated to how can I get my amygdala to react differently?
Mhm.
Also, it kind of promotes a mindfulness kind of perspective where they can observe how they're reacting
Mhm.
and begin to think, I don't understand why my heart is pounding, but now I realize now that's the amygdala ramping up this defense response, this fight or flight response. And
Mhm.
in doing that, um, giving them that perspective, you've created mindfulness. They're
Mhm.
watching what they're experiencing
Mhm.
rather than simply experiencing it.
And we know that part of overcoming really any mental distress is being able to sort of separate out yourself from the symptom. And what you're
From the
describing,
experience.
it's not only what's but neurobiologically going on, it
Mhm.
also psychologically helps create that separation between me and a part of my brain. Would you agree with that?
Right. You are not your amygdala. And also, you can, instead of saying, why do I react this way? I'm being stupid. You can say, the amygdala is so stupid, And then what you're doing, though, is now, even though you are feeling afraid of getting in this car with your partner, which you felt ever since the accident, say, you
Mhm.
could say, my amygdala doesn't want to get into the car. It's
Sure.
so ridiculous. I've
Mhm.
ridden with you hundreds of times, and now I'm feeling like this is like going to be terrifying.
Mhm.
And I'm starting to panic. And and also when we're trying to teach the amygdala, well, sometimes people will say things to their amygdala. They'll say like, "You're getting in the elevator with me, amygdala, whether you like it or not." It just
Mhm.
shifts the perspective
Yep.
on things. And if
Sure.
they know that that exposure experience is the way the amygdala learns. If you say, the amygdala doesn't learn through anything I say to you, all the lectures I give you, all the books you read, amygdala does not change. It doesn't, but it learns through experience. So if you take it to a situation, the truth is it will react as if that situation's dangerous, yes. But if you stay in the situation, it's almost like it reminds me of when we're driving our cars and the GPS is telling us to go a certain route and you're like, damn it, I'm not going that way. So you turn
Mhm.
a certain way and it keeps saying to return to the route, return to the route. But eventually, you know what it does? Recalibrating,
Yeah.
recalibrating. And then it's like, okay, take the next right. Da da
Mhm.
da. And then you're like, yep. If you stick with it long enough, your amygdala recalibrates. And so all this stuff, how could I explain this without bringing up the amygdala, without them knowing that there's a part of themselves that needs experience to learn? There's a part of themselves that behaves very differently if you get good night's sleep
Yeah.
than if you don't. And so in our culture, we don't believe sleep's important. We're like, well, people say, I can sleep when I'm dead, you know? So, but if you say, you know what, your amygdala behaves differently when you get good sleep and connect the panic attacks they have to a lack of sleep, suddenly they understand.
Yeah, it's a good point. Uh, we just kind of popped up on your social feed. Surprise. We also, besides talking about how to talk to our clients about the amygdala, we do want to invite you to
Oh, yeah.
consider coming to the 2022 Psychotherapy Networker Symposium. This is the advertising part here. Dr. Pittman has been a longtime speaker at Symposium. you go to a lot of conferences, I'm sure. Talk to us just a little bit about what we like to call the Super Bowl of psychotherapy.
It
It's sort of
is.
just everybody you can imagine is there. And our keynotes this year are Esther Perel, Resma Medicum, Steve Hayes, the founder and developer of ACT therapy or ACT. Emily Nagoski, author of Burnout and Come As You Are. She's a sex educator.
But
Who am I
you
forgetting?
go there and you
Yeah.
are able to talk face to face with so many people who you admire so much. And you also get to hear their stories, their techniques. And when we all are getting together and feeling just all the commitment to helping people and also just all the exhaustion, sometimes we can really support each other saying, this has been a really rough couple years.
Mhm.
And we need to be together with other people who understand that. So it is such a great bonding and learning experience. And you come with questions that other people are so happy that you have asked. You know, they're like, I'm so glad someone else asked that. I've been dealing with that issue. So it's just one of those helpful experiences, and it is so good not only to teach something for me, but then to talk to people afterwards and deal with their questions. And also we really try to do exercises that give you an opportunity to do some hands-on things, to workshop some things and work with your colleagues there. So it's just such a great learning experience and
Yeah.
just rejuvenating, refreshing.
Good. Some of you are getting some feedback. Sorry about that if you are getting some feedback. I think it was Patrick and a few others brought up biofeedback and neurofeedback. And these being ways for people to kind of see their brain and body working. Have you found those types of therapy can be helpful for certain clients in just seeing their brain working in real time?
Yes, they can be helpful, but one of the things that I say is I don't want people to feel like you always have to buy a lot of equipment. Not all of us can afford the equipment. There's so many things, but you can talk with your clients about some of the findings we have. You can do that. But I want to point out that you don't have to be real technical in order to use these interventions. You really just we simplify them in so many ways in which we try to talk about that the fact that there's a part of our brain that responds to exercise, to sleep, to relaxation, and it motivates the clients to be engaged in that. And the other thing is to try to help people understand the relationship between the amygdala and the cortex, because the amygdala is one way I kind of talk about it is trying to make this as simple as possible for people, because our clients don't all have degrees and they don't even need to know some of the complexity of the brain. But if you say the amygdala is kind of watching cortex television, so when you are thinking about things,
Wait, say that one more time.
the
The amygdala is doing
amygdala
what?
is watching cortex television. And you know what happens in the cortex doesn't stay in the cortex. So if you are thinking that your teenage daughter who isn't home yet had an accident because of the slippery roads and is bleeding in a ditch somewhere, your amygdala is watching that movie, right? And your amygdala reacts to that as though that's real, because you know what? There's no indicator that the amygdala has clear ways of sorting out what is an imagined or a logic derived kind of thought. So in other words, what ends up happening is we try to tell people your thoughts aren't dangerous, but your thoughts can activate the amygdala. And people who want to argue with me about the logic of things, but my daughter could be in an accident. What if she is? What if she? And I'm like, well, what if she is? Yes. But the truth is, you are suffering through an hour of anxiety, which isn't necessary, because doesn't she usually just show up in the door at the door? And they're like, yeah, she does. And so I say, so what I'm saying to you is, if you understand the relationship between the cortex and the amygdala, you often have people who are more willing to engage in cognitive restructuring to change their thinking processes in the cortex. Why? Because now they're thinking, I just don't want to activate my amygdala. I hate that. This is not good. And so there's so many ways in which we shift the client's perspective about things when we introduce these processes that are going on. But it's important that you realize you do not have to use any kind of you don't have to have an fMRI machine in your office, and you don't have to do anything with regard to connecting people to electrodes. And it definitely does help people if they're able to do that. But a lot of our clinicians they don't have the resources to that. So I don't want them to feel turned off by that.
But you have I'm with Melissa and Louise in the chat, and probably hundreds of others when they loved, and Tracy, who loved your analogy about, and I'm just going to say it one more time because it was so good, and I can't believe I've never heard of it. The
Watching
amygdala is
cortex.
watching
Yeah, cortex television. And so
TV.
you are thinking about things, and you might say, isn't it fine to just think about that? And I say, if you're fine with your amygdala getting activated for no good reason, fine. Let's just sit down and think about your parents dying now of COVID. Why don't we do it? It'll just get your amygdala act. And people are like, nah, I pass on that. Let's not do it. But when you recognize you do have techniques that you can use to change the anxiety experience you have every day. So much of it is about attention management. You know what is a big gift that people with OCD and worry need to be realizing? It's a gift that we can only focus our attention on one thing at a time, which is why we can't text and drive at the same time, right? Because all you have to do is change off one channel to another channel. You don't have to manage 27 different channels like your television. Your cortex only has a focus ability on one thing at a time. So what I'm saying is it's a gift to us to have that limited ability to attend. We can't focus on multiple things. So all you have to do is pry your attention off one thing onto another. One time I had a client who was there, and he was really being just bombarded by all these thoughts about guilt about something he hadn't done, but worry that he had done it and wasn't certain that he had, and all this. And he was just going over, and I gave him a peppermint lozenge and asked him to focus on it mindfully and just taste it. What was the taste? Feel it with his tongue, crunch it with his teeth, focus on that. I said, so what happened to your obsessing? And he said, it's gone. Can I have more of these? And I said, it doesn't matter. You can do this with washing the dishes. You just have to focus on something else. He said, I could play a video game. Yep. And suddenly they see things differently. You're getting off the anxiety channel, get off the worry channel.
This has just been a wonderful conversation, Catherine. So many people are responding, particularly to your Cortex TV analogy. I got to admit, I wasn't expecting that. That was a good one. We do want to hop off in just a moment, and I want to give Catherine one more chance to just leave us with something parting. So Catherine, take a moment and think about, what do you want to leave people with? If you could give them one more nugget about anxiety treatment. But first, I do want to extend a really warm invitation to join us for the Psychotherapy Networker Symposium. This literally is the Super Bowl of psychotherapy. We work all year. It's a small team of us who put this amazing event together.
It's amazing.
And the editorial team at Psychotherapy Networker magazine, apart from writing the magazine, we just focus on how can we create the biggest and best conference for therapists, not only where you learn, but you get excited and you feel good about being a therapist and you walk away kind of recharged. We focus on the education as much as we focus on the experience of it. So you will have a great experience, including we invited Gary Goldman, comedian from HBO's The Great Depression, himself struggles with major depression. He will be there live. You can join virtually as well you grab yourself a drink and enjoy an evening of comedy online, or you can join in person in DC. So it'll be a great experience and you'll get all the CEs you could ever want. So Catherine, what's this sort of parting nugget you could give us who are working with anxious clients?
Well, one of the key things I think people will say, well, if you teach a client that it's their brain that is causing it and it's the amygdala, then won't they use that as an excuse? And they'll say, I can't help it. My amygdala does this. I say the amygdala can learn every day of your life. Your amygdala is constantly learning. That's what's made it so valuable, that we can learn to be afraid of something that, the amygdala isn't prepared to be, just by experiences. So the main thing is to say, you can teach your amygdala to react differently. You can teach your cortex to react differently. You can change your experience of anxiety, but you have to know somebody who understands this. And that's what I'm here to do, try to help you to understand how our brains create anxiety, so that you will be able to change your brain. That's
I
what
so
it is.
appreciate you and your work. And I know many therapists probably became therapists because they themselves struggle with anxiety.
Mhm.
I had an anxiety and panic disorder for 10 years. It was crushing. And it was work like this with therapists like you all. And the reason I became a therapist, that I'm better, that so many of you out there are better, and we're working with clients every day to help them. Thanks everybody for joining. You can go now. The music is waning, and I really do hope to see you at the Psychotherapy Networker Symposium. And Catherine, I can't wait to see you there as well. See you, everyone.
Hi,
Bye-bye.
everybody.